Welcome to our webinar. First of all, welcome to Peter. Thank you for having some time at your busy schedule to tell us about a little bit how to think big and how to understand that actually there is no reason that you cannot succeed. And I know that we had really great interest about this subject and about your webinar and your thoughts. So I will not take any more time. All the participants, you can write your questions in the chat box or Q&A box, and we will answer the questions. Actually, Peter will answer the questions after the talk. But Peter, stage is yours.
Hey, thank you, and it's great to be here. And you know, nice shirt. So been a while since I was in Pärnu, but been there a few times. Obviously now not so much travel even between Finland and Estonia, but hopefully we'll kind of get there. But yeah, yeah, maybe first a few kind of like words on me and like what I've been up to. So I guess it's appropriate, you know, to start. So obviously I'm from Finland, but then if you look at kind of like my kind of like working life and all of that, if you don't go like all the way back, then you know, but go back to like the 90s. So I started my kind of like working life. I always like to say that I started at the original startup, if you will. So actually the company that Bill and Dave started in their garage in Palo Alto in California, all the way back in 1939. And of course that was, you know, before my time, but that company, so that was actually Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. So they started Hewlett Packard, and I actually had a chance to meet with both Bill and Dave when they were still around. And I always say that they're like fantastic entrepreneurs. So I mean, they started a fantastic company, HP, that is, you know, like still out there, huge corporation nowadays. But they actually also started the whole like Silicon Valley. And if you have a, you know, chance to go to California and you ever find your way to kind of like Palo Alto, then you can go there and you will still see that you know, famous garage there. So it's not like a very big or impressive garage, but that is actually it's the first historical landmark of Silicon Valley nowadays. So that is kind of like where Silicon Valley got started. And it's always good to remember, you know, because obviously now, especially now in like the tech industry, you know, it's Silicon Valley is always, you know, like kind of like talked about, dreamt about, and it's of course it's a big inspiration for many of us, and I think it's a fantastic place. But it's also good to remember that it wasn't started yesterday. It was started all the way back in 1939 by Bill and Dave, and it wasn't started by, you know, Google or Facebook or Apple or Twitter or one of these like newcomers. But I think what's you know, fantastic with Silicon Valley is that it has given birth to a lot of success stories, and I think that's something that of course is very inspirational. But yeah, it didn't start like yesterday. But yeah, so I started working there in the 90s. So, you know, spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. Then I worked at HP in Finland. So first, you know, doing some partner management, marketing, sales in Finland, and Europe, or, you know, Europe, Middle East, Africa. And then I ended up with a global role. And when I was doing that, actually started something called HP Bazaar. And then you might ask, like always everybody, when I kind of like introduced myself, that, oh, you know, like I'm Peter, and you know, like run this HP Bazaar thing. So then it's like, what is that? I mean, we know HP, you know, make printers and like whatnot, but what is this like Bazaar thing? And yeah, so that was something we started in 1999. So that was, when we had all these .coms. So you could say like one of the startup booms that, okay, then led to the .com boom and then .com bust. So some of us were around then and kind of like remember that. But 1999 was really when that was kind of like going strong. And then what had happened, and I think this is also kind of like a good lesson there. So HP, very successful company, and HP was very successful selling what was then called like, client server like systems. So a lot of like big Unix like servers to big corporations. Very, very successful doing that and running, like software like SAP and Oracle and all of that kind of stuff. And then what many times happens when you're successful, then, that I always say that it's kind of like the most dangerous thing for companies, that you kind of like think that you figured it out. And then, boom, it hits you. And what kind of like happened to HP, there right in the middle of the Silicon Valley, then, the internet and the whole like web happened, and HP was very successful selling, all these servers to the big corporations, and then, like the whole web took off, and then, people like Amazon.com and, Amazon now, all of these guys, took off. And there was this little company called Sun Microsystems that then started running around telling everybody, hey, we are the dot in .com. And then when these new internet startups, all these .coms, they needed to buy servers to run their, services. Then they, who do you call? Okay, you call Sun because they have something to do with this .com thing. So let's order servers from those guys. And then HP missed out on like that whole thing. And of course, then, like this is like ancient history nowadays, but that was before, everything was out there in the cloud and like all of that. So you actually had to buy hardware and run it yourself and like all of that. So I know that it's something that many of you might not be able to relate to, because now you can just go and, get something from AWS or, Microsoft or Google or whoever. But yeah, anyway, so HP kind of like managed to miss that. And then what happened was that I got, or actually my boss at the time, I was, doing this Europe, Middle East, Africa business and selling these servers and these solutions to the mobile operators. So that was actually one thing that I had done in Finland, and then I ended up, doing that for all of Europe, Middle East, Africa. Yeah, so then because we were like early with mobile, I mean, we had the first GSM operator and like all of that kind of stuff, early 90s. But yeah, so then HP missed out on this like .com thing, and then I think it was actually summer '99 or something like that. I got actually then invited to this strategy session, or actually I should say my boss at the time got invited to this strategy session in Palo Alto to HP headquarters. And then he was on his like summer vacation. So he said, okay, Peter, like I'm on vacation, so why don't you go to Palo Alto and like check this out? So then I ended up, going there, and then HP had, of course, lots of smart people, and they figured out like, okay, there's this like this .com and this internet, the web kind of like missed that wave. But then, okay, what will be the next thing? And then HP started talking about everything becoming a service, which of course now has happened with the cloud and everything, being out there, and we take it for granted that of course everything is a service. But then I was there, and coming from Finland, and we had already started to see the success of like Nokia and all of that. So I said that, yeah, I think that like of course everything will become a service, but I think that actually everything will become a mobile service. And of course now this is again obvious, but then I was told that, yeah, like maybe in Finland, like you don't have anything else to do, and you have like all these mobile phones, but here in the US we don't really need that, because we have pay phones everywhere. And now this of course sounds like a joke that, hey, how could anybody think that way? But like back in 1999, that was kind of like what people thought in the US, that, oh, we don't really need mobile phones because we have pay phones. And I think that it's also a good example, and we should always keep these kind of things in mind, that that it's sometimes difficult to see what is kind of like now obvious, that of course everything has become a service, and everything is, you know, now you just carry around your iPhone, your Android, and, you know, like it's an obvious thing, but it wasn't obvious, you know, like 20 years ago. But then anyway, so then because I was kind of like, you know, talking about this mobile thing, they said that, okay, yeah, Peter, so why don't you do it yourself? And, you know, like then we actually started pulling together this mobile strategy, and then we realized that we need to find a way for HP to work with all of these startups that are doing all these, you know, like mobile services. And we had a lot of those in Finland back in the day because of Nokia and like all of that. So we had companies that were doing crazy things like ringtones, you know, and you might remember that that was a thing. It actually, you know, was something that nobody believed in, but we actually, it was interesting that this was a company called Yomi Media, and then we had Akumiitti was another one. But anyway, they were doing the first services to download ringtones to your, you know, like Nokia phones, and then, okay, other phones got it as well. And then very successful in Finland. And then, so as I mentioned, I was in charge of like Europe and, you know, Middle East, Africa, all this EMEA thing. And then I actually had a meeting with Austrian mobile operator, and I said that, hey, you know, we have this fantastic solution for ringtones. And then they were like, yeah, you know, that might work in Finland, but it's never going to work here. So, you know, not going to happen. But then I said, okay, fine, that, you know, let's then do a deal. We will give you everything for free, all the servers, the software, everything, and we'll share the revenue 50-50. And then they thought, oh, that's like fantastic deal. They get all of this for free. And then, you know, like they just like give us half. And what happened was that we delivered this then to, it was an operator called Connect One. Yeah, I don't know what they're called now, maybe One. But anyway, so I think we delivered that in like October, November that year. And then, of course, you know, like Christmas happened and all of that. But the end result was that the service paid for itself in like a couple of weeks, because ringtones really took off, and then they ended up giving us like half of the revenue. So I can tell you that they never did that kind of deal ever again. And if other operators would have gotten to that, I mean, we would have made like hundreds of millions easily on ringtones, because it became a multi-billion dollar business. But my boss at the time almost got fired, because then HP did a lot of these like revenue share deals with companies selling, you know, like pet food on the internet, which, you know, wasn't such a great idea. So we were actually then told from like the corporate leadership that you're not allowed to do these kind of revenue share deals. Okay. Makers and all these startups. So we ended up, we started in Helsinki, and then in 1999, and then we expanded that program. So it was kind of like, you know, the question that you might ask, okay, the HP Bazaar, what is it? Okay, is it a marketing program, partner program, developer program? Like, what is it? So then I always say that it's all of that and more. Everybody else, all our competitors were calling their like similar activities, competence centers, excellence centers, super boring like corporate stuff. So these things came and went, so they didn't last for long. But we were running this Bazaar program for many years. And then in 2003, that was when, you know, like our friends at Nokia, you know, another great Finnish company, they were still making phones. They had just come out with their first like smartphones, 7650, 3650. Some of you might remember them. I think they had color screens that had a resolution of 100 and was it 172 pixels times 208 pixels, some, you know, like not very high resolution, but color screens, smartphones, running Symbian, Java, all of that stuff. So I organized then, together with, you know, my team at the HP Bazaar, we organized a game making competition. And the competition was organized in August 2003. So the idea was to have people create mobile multiplayer games, and mobile obviously because first smartphones were out, and this was many years before iPhone and Android, and the multiplayer because on the HP side we wanted to supply like the boring infrastructure to run these exciting games, so all these servers. So that was kind of like the motivation for HP to do this. And yeah, by the way, one thing that happened with this HP Bazaar thing that we started in Helsinki, but then we took it to Tokyo, we took it to Singapore, back to the Silicon Valley, to Cupertino, actually where now the Apple like spaceship like headquarters that was used to be an HP site. So again, shows creative destruction or something. But anyway, and then we took it to Beijing, Shanghai, London, Amsterdam, Milan, Toronto, a bunch of places. So it became like a massive global success story, and we worked with 600 startups. But anyway, then we did this game making competition, and then 3 young guys from Aalto University, or it was called a technical university at the time. So Niklas, Kim, and Jarno, they took part in this competition, and they won the competition. So they created this game called King of the Cabbage World. Which never came out under that name, but it was later published actually by Ilkka, so Ilkka Paananen and his team at Sumea, which then became Digital Chocolate, and then you might have heard of Ilkka because of Supercell. But anyway, small, world. But yeah, so then Niklas and the guys won this game making competition, and as I mentioned, they were students at Aalto University, and then they came to me after the competition and said that, okay, that now what? I mean, we're students here at Aalto, we won this game making competition, what should we do? And then I said that, and I always have the same advice that, hey, you love not only playing games but making games, so why don't you start a company to do what you love? Because it's always a good idea to do what you love. So why don't you start a company, make games? And then they actually did that. So in 2003, they started Rovio. And then over the following 6 years, they made 51 games. So lots of different, games for, like all these Java phones and smartphones and like all of that. And then the 11th of December 2009, so a bit over 10 years ago already. So, time flies when you're having fun. They came out with a 52nd game, which was Angry Birds. Again, just like with this Silicon Valley story that it took, a few years for that to happen, 1939 until like today. Also with Rovio, that it wasn't the first game, it wasn't the second game, it wasn't the third game, it was the 52nd game that was then, a bit of a success. And yeah, so then Angry Birds actually didn't take off like immediately. So, I mean, we got it to #1 in Finland because, back in 2009, home of Nokia, not that many iPhones. So it was like good enough to then tell friends and family that, hey, why don't you download this, Angry Birds game to your iPhone, and then became #1 in Finland. And then became #1 in Sweden. Apple took note that there was something going on, featured Angry Birds in the UK and in the US, and then the game became #1 there, and actually stayed there. So stayed at the #1 position for more than 200 days, I think almost 300 days, which is like long time. And then actually was talking to, and I wasn't working, I actually joined full-time Rovio then, so I was kind of like at HP for a while, and then did some startups, and then Niklas contacted me and said that, hey, we would need some help in the US. And then I said, yeah, sure, I can help, like a couple of days a month, no problem. And then, I know my way around there. So then I opened up some doors to Apple and Google, and HP had bought Palm. So my pals at HP were also like a player in the mobile phone business back then. And then actually at one of these, I think it was like a VentureBeat event or something like that. Then I was on a panel and wasn't even wearing like a red hoodie or anything. then some guy came up to me and said that, hey, oh, are you from Rovio? And, are like Angry Birds? And I said, yeah. And then he said that, oh, could I have my picture taken with you? And then I was like, okay, I'm here like in San Francisco at this VentureBeat event, and there's like, somebody wants to have their picture taken with me. That's like, what is going on here? And then I realized that actually we have lots of fans, like all ages, all over the place, like massive number of fans of Angry Birds. And then, back in Helsinki, then I told like Niklas and team that, hey, I'll join like full time, but let's agree on 3 things then. That, okay, let's go for 100 million downloads. And okay, now 100 million downloads, I mean, nobody like now listening to this, okay, no big deal, I mean, 100 million. Lots of people have done that. But if you go back to, 2010, actually 100 million, nobody had done. So Tetris had been around for like, I think 20 years back then, so now 30. But anyway, in 20 years, Tetris hadn't gotten to 100 million. And that was like one of the biggest games of like all time. So I was told that, hey, Peter, you're crazy, you're insane, that it's like impossible to get to 100 million. Nobody has done that. So then I said, okay, fine, but let's like set that as the objective. And then said that, okay, and then the other thing, let's not sell the company to the first American company that comes knocking on the door. And they all did, I mean, Disney, Zynga, DreamWorks, you name it, and didn't sell. And then I said that, okay, and let's go for like $1 billion in valuation. So, like unicorn status. And then of course, everybody was like, oh, Peter, you're like crazy, you're insane. That's like, hey, come on. And I still remember when we had some messages after some of our meetings in the Valley then with, I think, Zynga and EA and all of these, that, hey, we're now worth like 60 million, which of course, I mean, a lot of money and all of that. But, now looking at that time and then what happened, I mean, with the IPO, we got to the $1 billion in the end. So that was pretty cool. But then, like it's always interesting to look back, because these things are not kind of like, I mean, they're obvious now. And of course, of course you would do that. And of course you would go for 100 million because, like, why not? But, back then it was like crazy. And you also have to remember that when Angry Birds came out, there were only like 12 people at Rovio. So, not like a huge company or anything like that. And actually the company had almost gone bust. I mean, if Angry Birds wouldn't have been a success, then, I wouldn't be here, and like Angry Birds would and the company would not be around. So I think that's also important to keep in mind. But yeah, anyway, so then we agreed that, okay, fine, let's go for 100 million and let's not sell the company, and okay, the $1 billion, yeah, okay, well, do that. And then the first 12 months of Angry Birds actually got 50 million downloads, and then Christmas 2010 happened, and everybody got new iPhones and Androids, and then how it is that you have a new phone, and then you go to the App Store, you check out like, okay, what is this Red Bird that is #1, let's check it out. Okay, we added 25 million downloads over Christmas, and then in March 2011 we got to the impossible, so we hit the 100 million. So then we, I think that we were maybe 20, 30 people in the company, something like that. And then we ordered, like a few bottles of champagne from the kitchen, and then we had like a, okay, great, 100 million, and then back to work, so no big deal. And I think that that's also like important, like in any startup, any business, that you shouldn't, yeah, it's important to celebrate, but then like back to work, so you shouldn't like lose the hunger and lose the focus on like the mission at hand. But yeah, anyway, what was also very interesting, so always, I mean, then what happened was that we grew the company from the 12 people to 850. And then a lot of times people ask that, okay, but isn't that like very difficult? Actually, I think that growing, of course, I mean, everything has its own challenges, but I think that when you're growing very fast, things are moving very fast, you can like learn to focus on like the important things, and small problems are, exactly that. So there are small problems and you can like tend to ignore those and then just like keep moving. So it wasn't actually that difficult. So I think that's one kind of like important lesson. And also, if you look at another thing, we then very early on decided that the strategy was that let's make games for like the iPhone and like the touch devices until we have a hit, and then let's go all in. And all in this case wasn't about like all in on just like the game, but realized that it's very difficult to make games, and it's super difficult to make hit games. As most people who know anything about the games industry will tell you that there's no like kind of like magic like sauce or like some kind of standard recipe for how to make, you know, hit games. It's you know, a bit like name implies, like hit and miss kind of thing. So you know, yeah, so we knew that it's like super difficult. So once we have a hit, let's go all in. I mean, there are many companies that then think that, okay, now we figured it out, so let's make the next hit game. And yeah, it doesn't work like that. But it's the same in music and movies, that there are many of these, you know, one-hit wonders that, you know, then try to do the next thing and all of that. But yeah, so we decided that, okay, let's go all in on Angry Birds. And then we bought an animation studio, so we started making animation. We expanded into consumer products in all forms and shapes, you know, everything from, you know, obviously t-shirts, funny hats, soft drinks, parks, you know, like really everything. And then a lot of people start saying, but hey, you know, like you guys, you're like a games company, that you should focus on games. And then I always explain that actually, you know, and focus is a word that I think is like totally misused many times, that, you know, like it's people use that when they don't want you to do something. So, you know, like you should focus. And I think that it's like in my book, focus is many times, it's just another F word. So I think that with the focus, I always explain that, hey, actually, you know, at Rovio, we're totally focused on providing Angry Birds branded experiences in all forms and shapes to our fans. So the focus was on the brand of Angry Birds, not just on games. Of course, the game enabled us to do all of those things, you know, the animation, the consumer products, you know, like all of that. And in fact, actually, in 2011 or 12, 11, I think, or let's see, no, 12, Angry Birds was already on the top 10 most licensed brands in entertainment. So if you looked at the top 10 list of 2012, you had 7 brands by Disney. So Disney does fantastic job at this. So they had, you know, Mickey and Friends, they had Toy Story, Star Wars, Marvel, all of these things that they acquired. But anyway, 7 Disney brands. And then you had Hello Kitty, so this 40-year-old, you know, cat character by Sanrio from Japan. And then you had Peanuts, you know, so Snoopy, that's been around since like the 50s, and Angry Birds 2 years. So we became kind of like the fastest growing consumer brand ever. And then, you know, and then I always say that, you know, like, yeah, of course that was like easy for us to do because, you know, like Finnish people, everybody knows, best marketeers on the planet. And then, you know, Finnish people and maybe also Estonian people laughed at, yeah, I didn't know that. But anyway, that's, I guess, still like maybe not widely known. But yeah, then, you know, on this, you know, back to this, that, okay, when we hit the 100 million downloads and, you know, like, and then, okay, yeah, as I mentioned, we expanded into all these areas that, I mean, I always say that, and I'm asked that, okay, the kind of like the secret of the success and how did you make it happen? Then I always say that, you know, like, once we hit that 100 million, and if you ask then, because we were 12 people when the game came out, and then we grew to 850, meaning that most of the people were new to the company. They were not there when kind of like the success happened, the breakthrough happened. So then you kind of like ask these newcomers that, okay, so what exactly do you do at Rovio? And then, you know, the answer would be that, oh, you know, like we make games, and then 100 million downloads happens. So, you know, new game, 100 million, new game, 100 million. So that was kind of like normal. Of course, getting to 100 million downloads, you know, it's not easy, but it's also, you know, it's not difficult if you know what you're doing. So when I'm asked about the success, I always say that, yeah, you know, like super easy, because, you know, everybody in the company, you know, being from Finland, everybody knows how to walk on water. And then, you know, like, what do you mean, like walking on water? Isn't that like impossible? And then I say, yeah, you know, like, yes, but if you know how to do it, it's actually super easy. And, you know, as anybody in Finland or Estonia would know that if you come here in the winter, it's super easy because the water is frozen. So, you know, then you just like walk on it, and it's like, how difficult can it be? And I think that this is something that is true for many, many things in life, that first, you know, like you think about, you know, that, okay, 100 million, that's like impossible. You know, as I was told, like when I first said that, okay, let's go for 100 million downloads, because nobody had done that. So it's like, you know, you're crazy, it's impossible, it can't be done. But then you figure it out, and you figure out like how to do that. Then it becomes easy, you know how to do it. And it's the same with, you know, walking on water, that, you know, of course it's, you know, if you try to do that in the summer, yeah, then it's, you know, probably like not so easy. But then you figure out that, hey, let's wait for winter, and it's like actually super easy. And I think that this is true for many, many things in life, that first you think that, okay, it's impossible, but then you figure out like how, and you know, realize that actually it wasn't impossible, and actually it was pretty easy. And I always say that there are very, very few things in life that actually are impossible. So you know, there's always a way, you know, to get there and figure it out. So as long as you don't need to break any kind of like, you know, laws of nature or anything like that, then you know, you can figure it out. But sometimes it takes, you know, like 51 games, and then 52nd game is Angry Birds. So I think that that's also maybe a lesson there, that there are very few of these like overnight success stories. And, you know, you could always say that, hey, why didn't you just start by making Angry Birds, you know, the first game? But I mean, it's, of course, there's a lot of learning by doing involved. So I think that that's also why, you know, VCs and investors in general, they like investing in people who have actually been around. And if you have a few like bankruptcies, you know, behind you, it's like actually like a good thing, because then probably you have learned a few things, and then you will not do the same mistake again. So I think that's also, you know, part of the culture. And this is again, of course, very much like a Silicon Valley kind of like thing, if you look at like how to deal with failure and all of that. But yeah, anyway, so I think that yeah, then we went on, you know, to make, you know, the first full feature-length movie, 2016, got that out, came #1 in 52 countries, and that was a lifetime. Then I decided that, okay, it's good time for me to step down from like day-to-day operations and start focusing on bigger things, like, you know, building the tunnel, and, you know, like doing some stuff around education and all of that. So that's what I've been up to, you know, now since 2016. So that's also like quite a while. And of course, a lot of people are telling me that it's going to be impossible to get this like Helsinki-Tallinn tunnel built, but actually it's just a question about time. So, you know, let's see if we get it up and running end of 24, or if we have to wait until 25, but, you know, it's a question of time. So that's definitely like happening. So that's one thing that I'm working on right now. And then also been working with a lot of startups over here, investing, advising, even like co-founding, founding some of these companies. So that's something that I've been up to here as well. And actually, one thing that I should also, you know, I mentioned kind of like the HP Bazaar thing and like the branding there. So that's a good example of how I always love doing branding. And I think that brand is super important. And I always say that if you're serious about making games, you have to be serious about the marketing and the branding and like everything. That's because who cares if you make the best game ever if nobody knows about it? So I think that that's something that is very, very important. And I mean, that was also part of what we did at Rovio. I mean, like to get to 100 million downloads, as an example of some of the marketing we did. I mean, we launched Angry Birds Space in space on the International Space Station together with NASA. We put a big red bird on the Space Needle, because that's, of course, has to do with space. So the Space Needle in Seattle. So if you Google Space Needle, you will see a lot of the images that are, you know, still there on the web are actually showing the Space Needle in Seattle with a big red bird hanging from the side of it, which we did, back then in 2012 when we launched that. But again, so we did a lot of these kind of activities to make sure that we got all the attention, and then we got, in a few days, we got a 50 million downloads, and we got to the 100 million and like all of that. So we learned how to do, pretty amazing marketing. So not just amazing games, but also marketing that was kind of like second to none. And in many of these cases, actually the marketing was stuff that other people paid for. So, launching Angry Birds Space in Space actually didn't cost us anything. We actually made money on that because we had Samsung launch the Galaxy Note at the same time. So they actually paid us for getting their device featured in the launch video that we then created together with NASA. And Don Pettit, who was the astronaut who was up there, he built this like real world Angry Birds game on the space station. And if you go on YouTube, you can still like see the video. It's pretty cool. So it's up there, and then like in the end of that video, you have like Samsung, so brought to you by them, and so that was also like how we always like doing marketing. That it's always best if you can do that like with other people's money. So that's always the most cost-effective way of doing that. But yeah, and then if you look at kind of like the brand of Angry Birds and all that, what actually makes the brand amazing is that when you first hear Angry Birds, you will ask yourself, why? Why are the birds angry? And when you ask that question, then the brand is stuck in your head forever. So that's actually a great example of how great brands work. That's what you want to have. You want the brand to create a reaction and ideally a question. So, my example from the beginning of the talk, the HP Bazaar, everybody always asks like, so what is that? Is it a marketing program? Is it a partner program? Like what exactly is it? And then it's like, yeah, it's all of that. And you get the conversation going. And same thing kind of like with Angry Birds and like all of that. And also, I mean, my title at Rovio, the Mighty Eagle. So then always, every meeting, you hand over your business card, Mighty Eagle, then, like, okay, what is this? And then you get the discussion going. So I think that's always, like how you want to do your marketing, that, create a reaction, create a question, then people will remember you and your company and your product and, like everything. So I think that's super, super important. So that's something that you should always like think about. And that was also what we did. I mean, we also did, like we launched, Slush. So wearing like the other brand here, actually, the Slush Shanghai. So that's also, why Slush became the biggest and best startup event on the planet. Everybody else was doing these wannabe Silicon Valley events that they want to be, the Silicon Valley of China, the Silicon Valley of Asia, you name it. And what we decided to do with Slush is that we decided to do the event in November. And when you come to Helsinki or Tallinn, for that matter, in November, we all know that it's cold, it's dark, there's slush on the ground. So it's very clear from the first second when you set, foot on the ground, that it's not the Silicon Valley. It's better. And it's much, much better because it's different. And I think this is another very important thing when you kind of like think about, like your games and, like your services. When you think about the brand, always think about like, how do you differentiate? How do you stand out? How do you make sure that people remember what you are doing? And, I always ask, startups and everybody pitching to me that, like, okay, but what can I tell, my friends about what you are doing? So it should be very, very easy that, hey, I just met with these guys from Pärnu and they are working on this like amazing thing, and all of that. So you have to always think about that, why is what you are doing different, hence better. So most of the time when you do things differently, it's automatically better just because it's different. So that's something that is very, very important. But anyway, so I mean, right now working on many things and doing the tunnel. So making good progress on that, even though we have some interesting discussions with the governments on both sides of this finest Bay Area. Always interesting to deal with the ministers there in Estonia, and you know, like depends a little bit on which day, you know, and which minister you ask what the opinion is. But I mean, we're getting there, so you know, it's just a question of time. And yeah, then I'm involved with a lot of local startups here in Finland, in Estonia, and like world. So that's something that I'm you know, keeping myself busy with. But I think that maybe, you know, a good time to stop here. So you know, thank you for having me so far, and then we can like look at, you know, questions, comments. So yeah, let's do that.
Yes, thank you, Peter. As I listen to you, I understand that you like never know when you start what's gonna happen. You connect the dots afterwards.
Yep.
And one thing that stuck to my head is that you say that you need to do what you love.
Yeah, I think that's always a good starting point for everything. And one thing that there, I mean, it's kind of like obvious, but I think that what is also very important. I mean, if you think about it yourself, I mean, we all know, you know, of these, you know, fantastic products and services, and you can tell if the people working at that, you know, company providing those products and services, you can tell if they actually like love what they do. And I think that this is something that what we always said at Rovio, that you know, we make games that we love to play ourselves. And I think that this is also kind of like important, and I think that you can really tell from products and services, you know, and the companies, that if that's the case. And you know, if you have a company where people like hate what they do, then you can't expect, you know, like the products to be like super good. And I think also that this, you know, like do what you love to do, it's easy to say, but it's also like then many times you hear that, oh, but yeah, but I mean, like I have to kind of like make a living, and you know, like it's but I think that it's again, if you don't, you know, love what you do, or if you don't even like what you do, you're doing the wrong thing, and then you should kind of like look for another job. So I think that's something that is always like important. So that's why I always have like the same advice. I mean, especially to young people, but in general, I think that it's a very important thing that you know, why bother doing stuff that you don't kind of like love doing?
Of course, thank you. Another thing what I wrote down actually was that, as you say, that work on the water, that if you already understand what is the best way to succeed, that you repeat it all the time. So it's just need to take some time to understand what is working, what is not. Yes.
Yeah, but I think also one thing that I also always say, and actually when working at HP, we actually even like wrote a small book. Actually, we even called it not the big bazaar book, but anyway, but a small book. But we actually wrote down like a bunch of these like things that we learned, and like some, you know, a bit like funny and entertaining, like kind of like business rules. But one of the important things there was that, you know, and I think that it's very relevant in this, that you know, like don't think, do think. And what I mean by that is that it's very important that you do things, and you know, learning by doing. I think that you can learn so much more by actually doing things, you know, rather than just, you know, like, okay, thinking about it and analyzing, and then, you know, it's much faster. And typically nowadays, it's also much cheaper to just do things because you can build, you know, and you can whip together like, you know, prototype, you know, like an MVP, like very quickly. And then test it and find out that, okay, does it work? Will anybody like use it? Will anybody pay anything? Or, you know, like all of that. So learning by doing, and not like overly, you know, like analyzing everything. I think that's something that, again, doing things super important because that's the way you learn. And then, you know, of course, when you do new things, then many times you fail, but then you kind of like, you learn, and then you do like more, and then, you know, 50-second game done, you know. So I think that it's learning by doing is like super important, not only in startups, but I mean like everywhere. That it's and especially when we talk about you know, digital services and all of that, then yeah, learning by doing is like super important.
Let's go to the questions. So Brittany asked, how did you find your business partners?
You basically just like stand up, look around and see who's like in there in the ecosystem, and you go and talk to them. So I think that that's how I always approach things, that, you know, like you just go and talk to people, ask them for, you know, like help. And most of the time people want you to be successful and they want to help you. So I think that that's, I think again, yeah, as simple as that, that you can like go and stand in the middle of the ecosystem and then you start looking around like who is doing what here. You know, if you're doing games, then you start looking around that, okay, these guys here, I should probably talk to. And I think that that's actually been a huge kind of like part of the success of the ecosystem, you know, around games here in Finland, that everybody knows everybody. And then if you need some help, you can go and talk to, you know, any of the guys who actually know better than you do. And they are more than happy to kind of like share their experiences and all that. So I think it's yeah, that's how you find the partners. And I'm seeing that let's see. So Martin is interested in the ecosystem, but hey, I think that that's also like important thing there is exactly that I mean, like compare notes, talk to the other people in the, you know, gaming ecosystem or whatever ecosystem you happen to be in, and then you know, you'll figure it out together. And then I would say that, I mean, we have a pretty good ecosystem over here in Finland. So then, you know, like okay, under normal like circumstances, it's like 2 hours on the ferry and you're here. And okay, then in the future it'll be 20 minutes once we get the tunnel going, so then it's going to be even more integrated. But I think that, you know, we're pretty much like right next door, and it's pretty easy to connect with the people in the ecosystem here. And I'm more than happy to connect, you know, with whoever needed, and been working with Martin on some of that as well. So, but yeah. Just ask.
Okay, then another question is about yeah, when you go through getting 100 million downloads and other impossible goals, how did you persist if even the people around you at the company doesn't believe?
Yeah, but I think that it's you have to kind of like lead by example, and you have to just go out there and do things. But I think that also, I mean, the importance of the like the 100 million, actually there's a few important things there, that it's very important to have kind of like a clear, easy to understand goal. So I think that this is again like 100 million is like super easy. There is no like debating it, that okay, you know, have we reached it or not? I mean, so it's like one of these very, very concrete things, and it's very ambitious. And I think that it's always all about like ambition and attitude, and you know, really not being afraid of setting very, very ambitious, almost like impossible goals. So that I think is important for any business, any company, for any team. And then just going out there and figuring out like, okay, that's what we need to do. And immediately, you know, when you do that kind of ambition and you set that kind of goal, you really need to think about how to get there. I mean, it's a little bit like if you decide that, okay, let's grow 10% or 20%, or let's double our business. That's, you can probably do by a bit of like, you know, doing things a bit better, a bit faster, a bit, you know, like differently. But if you want to do a 10x like growth in any business, then you really need to rethink many things, and you really need to you know, start doing things differently. And I think that the same with the 100 million, that then you really have to think about what is needed to get there. So, you know, if you would have said that, okay, 10 million, because at the time, I mean, we maybe had 1 million or 2 million downloads. So, okay, that's also like, of course, a lot, but it's not like 100 million. So I think that one reason why I'm a huge fan of like not being afraid of setting very ambitious goals, because I think that it actually defines you know, a lot of the steps and the actions that you actually need to take, that everybody then understands that it's not going to be good enough that we, you know, we think about, okay, here we can add 1 million. That's like, okay, but hey, we need 100 million. So how do we do that? What do we need to do? And then of course there's a lot of like small steps and bigger steps that you need to do, but it really calibrates everybody's thinking, and everybody's then like totally focused on, okay, that's where we need to go, this is what we need to do, this is why we are doing it. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest challenges for many organizations and you know, people in general, that we are kind of like very good at kind of like limiting our own like potential. So we're afraid of setting like goals that we think, oh, it's like, but it's too ambitious. So maybe not 100 million, let's go for a 10 million or something like that. And of course, 10 million is ambitious as well in that, but it's not, you know, 100 million. And I thought that that was ambitious, but then we got there, you know, like in 15 months. And okay, if you look at Angry Birds now, it's over 4 billion downloads, something like that, which is like, you can't even like comprehend. But of course, it's not the biggest. I mean, there are companies that have, you know, like 8 billion approaching 10 billion, and that those are numbers that you can't even like comprehend, that like, how did that happen? So yeah, ambitious goals, very important. And it's also goals in general, that there are so many organizations that if you ask people like, what are you doing here? Then, you know, people don't even know. And where do you want to go? And I always say that if you don't know where you want to go, you're not going to get there. I mean, that's of course obvious, but it's just surprising how many people don't know where they want to go.
Okay, so we have some time for a couple of questions. I will start one of them. You speak about that in one point you decided to go all in Angry Birds. What was the decision or making? Do you really deliberately know that you want to go to the animation and all those products, or you just?
No, I think that it, let's say that kind of like a little bit like yes and no, but I think that it was more about then kind of like the big thing there was that not a games company, a brand and a character company. And I think that that is also actually important, that for many companies that, you know, really think about the business you're in. And if you look at, you know, you take Rovio and Angry Birds and you take Supercell. I mean, Supercell guys, then, okay, they, Ilkka and the guys, yeah, they actually launched Supercell at Slush, I think like 2011 or something like that. But anyway, and then they looked at Rovio, and if those guys can do that, you know, then we can do that and better. And they did, and then, okay, became like a 10 billion, you know, like exit, which is like amazing. The first decacorn in Europe and all of that. But yeah, so I think that it's if you look at Rovio and Supercell, like on the surface, they are games companies, but actually they are very, very different. So Supercell is like a free-to-play, super successful games company, and, you know, free-to-play games company, and Rovio is a brand company. And I think that it's totally different businesses. I mean, yes, both have games, but it's very different. And I think that, and you could also argue, I mean, but I can't like comment too much on that, but I mean, you could also look at like some of these companies today, and do they know what they're doing and where the value is and what their strength is. So I think that it's also important to think about your strengths, and then also think about what I was saying earlier, that, okay, how are you different, and how are you then going to make it very clear to kind of like the rest of the world that what you are doing is different, and this is, you know, like also why you will be successful. So I think that this point about being different is, you know, easy to say, but it's very difficult to kind of like execute on that, because people, you know, are very much, I mean, all of us, we want to conform, we want to be part of like a group, we want to fit in. And I think that this is in marketing and for like companies and I would say people also, like that's not what you want to do. I mean, there are many of these where you kind of like really need to do things differently, and you shouldn't be afraid of them standing out and doing things differently. So, but yeah, I mean, the thing there, if you look at now, take Rovi as an example, I would say for most companies that it's always easy, kind of like after the fact, you know, say, oh yeah, of course we knew what we were doing and everything was like very clear. But I don't think that it's always clear, but I think that the big picture was very clear that that it was all about the brand. And it wasn't maybe clear to the outside world, and they were like, oh, you're a games company. But you know, they didn't get it. We knew what we were doing, and you know, the outside world maybe didn't understand. But I think that over time, you know, they kind of like figured it out. So I think that that's also very important to think about, like what you're really doing, and that's something that, again, clarity, you know, in strategy and everything.
Mm-hmm. So you need to have a clear big picture.
Yeah, I think that it's,
where to go.
It's a little bit like that. You know, it kind of like helps if you know what you're doing. You know, so I think that it's you know, it's useful.
Okay, one question more about Dreaming Big tunnel.
Right.
It is a really big project, and actually before the webinar, our team was joking that forget about Tallinn, maybe you just come straight to Pärnu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we could do that. But actually, I mean, like we think that it's actually going to be like pretty amazing, because the thing is that you can get then to you know, Tallinn and Ülemiste 20 minutes, and then it's like half an hour with hopefully get the Rail Baltic like done as you know, planned. So then it's like another 30 minutes, and you're in Pärnu. So you know, then from where I'm sitting right now here in Finland, you know, it would be like an hour, and I would be, you know, like there, and that's, you know, totally changes the whole like dynamic. And this is I think also one thing that it's the same thing happened, you know, like with this West Metro. So we had the metro expansion that actually they're still continuing that, but when the first phase of the West Metro was completed here in Finland, here in the Helsinki area, everybody knew, and it was delayed many years, and like as usual. But anyway, even though it was kind of like obvious that, hey, you know, it's coming and it's happening, then it always surprises people when it's actually there, and how it changes the behavior and the whole dynamic. That it's and I think that that is also what I think is like super exciting about the tunnel, because then it really means that, you know, the Helsinki and Tallinn like areas are the same. I mean, and that actually will change a lot of things. I mean, and it's not just, you know, like the connectivity, but there's you know, what happened with this Malmö Copenhagen like a bridge, the Öresund bridge. Immediately 20,000 people from Denmark you know, moved to Sweden because it's slightly cheaper to live there. And then everybody in the like Malmö, Skåne area got employed in Copenhagen area. So unemployment was kind of like gone. And I think that when we then start thinking about, okay, yeah, the tunnel is like enabling a lot of things, but it's also enabling this kind of dynamic that we now have about 50,000 Estonians living in Finland, maybe less than 5,000 Finns living in Estonia. So then if you have a 20-minute connection, what will happen is the same, and maybe even like at a bigger scale that happened between Denmark and Sweden. So we will have tens of thousands of people that are currently living, you know, here in the Helsinki or on the Helsinki side. They will move to Tallinn, and then I think that a lot of, or you know, most people will then end up working in Helsinki, and this is kind of like very interesting dynamic. And this is also what a lot of people don't understand when they know, but hey, because we're talking about now from the current like bit over 10 million trips every year, that we're gonna see over 50 million trips every year, that it's impossible. But actually, when you start looking at the numbers and then the people that will start commuting like on a daily basis because they can and because it's a 20-minute connection, then the numbers very quickly add up and we see a totally different dynamic. So it's a little bit one of these examples that if you build it, they will come. In this case, you know, like when you have that connection, it creates totally new demand. And it makes the market totally different from like, you know, a 2-hour plus, you know, like ferry connection to 20 minutes. So then, you know, like you could go several times a day. You know, I have a meeting in the afternoon in Tallinn. Okay, I'll be there, you know, and stuff like that. So this is also, I think that it's a little bit like when people said that it's impossible to get to 100 million downloads of Angry Birds. And of course, it turned out not to be impossible, because what people didn't realize that, you know, this explosion in smartphones and touch devices. I mean, it's the same thing, you know, if I go back to the like 90s and I told people that actually what will happen is that the market for phones will be 1 billion a year. And then people are like, yeah, right, come on. But it was very easy to see that, of course, it will happen. I mean, if I looked at the experience in Finland and, you know, like nobody can live without a mobile phone nowadays. I mean, very few people, you know, there's, you know, many other things that you would give up before you would ever give up your mobile phone. So of course it becomes one of these things. And then, you know, like, yes, now we see, you know, 1 billion phones shipped in like China alone, you know, so that's like, or actually I think it's like now, you know, bit below 1 billion, but a year, but still, you know, this wasn't obvious, and it wouldn't have been obvious to say, yeah, you know, that's going to happen in China alone. Then say, yeah, right, China, they can never afford to buy these, you know, things and all of that. But of course they could. So I think that, yeah, again, it is about also being able to see things before other people. So I think that's also important. And I think with the tunnel, I think that it's, for me, very, very clear, you know, why it's needed, but it's also very clear, like what the impact will be. And I think that this is something that people didn't see here with like this West Metro like expansion, but hey, it happened, and it happened actually in a bigger way than people even expected. And I think that with the tunnel, you know, it's just a question of time. People will kind of like figure it out, but it's yeah, it's a fantastic business case, and it makes you know, all the sense to make that happen. So so for me, it's not, yes, it's a huge project, but it's kind of like obvious thing to do.
Of course, to connect your thoughts with your when you started that that HP didn't see or miss the service business. The thing is that most of people don't see the bigger trends, what's going to happen, and if as you has a little different view and see in a different point of view how the big picture is playing out, then it's of course exciting. Okay.
But one thing I have to say there, that I mean, what is very important there is that it's also a little bit about like these like self-fulfilling prophecies. So you know, it's one of these things that you know, what I always say, that what is like cool about the future is that, you know, like it's up to us to make it so, you know, so we can impact the future. We can't, you know, like do much about the past, obviously, that's like gone, but the future is what we will make it to be. And this is something that you know, it's kind of like, of course, it's obvious, but it's very, very true. And you know, this is the kind of like thing that you just have to kind of like then go out there and make it so. I mean, it doesn't happen by itself, but of course you can. There's no reason kind of like why not. But and sometimes it takes a bit longer. Sometimes it takes, you know, like 51 games in the 52nd game, and it's like the same thing with you know, many projects, and the same is true for the tunnel project, that it's not like my idea or anything. I mean, there was like 18 100 was it 60 or 64 or something, when they had the first like plan for like a bridge between you know, Helsinki and Tallinn. And of course the timing, you know, and it didn't like happen, but it's not like a new idea, but then it's just, you have to keep at it, and then okay, boom, 2024 tunnel done, you know, and then it's like obvious.
Okay. The very last question.
Yes.
What is your like inner driver or inner motivation that if you take the big projects and there are a lot of obstacles and a lot of people don't believe it. So how do you go through it?
Yeah, but I think that I never had like a problem with motivation. So I think that that's kind of like, I don't know, it's like difficult to say like why. I guess that like with all entrepreneurs, you know, you have to be a bit crazy and all of that. But then I think that it's also kind of like learned that, you know, it's kind of like, why not? I mean, why couldn't we make this? And then people who then, you know, telling you that it can't be done or it's impossible, then I think that for me personally, I get like more energy out of that. Then it's like up to me to prove that, hey, you know, like, hey, of course it can be done. You know, 100 million, of course, you know, like tunnel, why not? And I think that, yeah, I mean, the same thing with Slush. I mean, many people say that it's like impossible to make that, you know, the biggest and best startup event on the planet. Like, what about Silicon Valley? And then I'm always like, what about Silicon Valley? Fantastic place. I mean, I've been there more times than I can count, but you know, it's already there. So if you want to create something better, you have to do something different. And you know, that's the whole point, that you just like go out there and then you kind of like make it so. And I think that I always say that, you know, like when people laugh at you when you are like setting some of these like goals and objectives, then you know that you are setting your goals, you know, at the right level, and then it's just like up to you to go out there and stop the laughter. So I think that's you know, always like good if people laugh. So it's, you know, it's healthy.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
For conclusion, so have a big vision and just it's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, and then, you know, just go out there and make it so.
Okay, thank you very much for having this hour with us.
Hey, thank
and
you.
sharing your ideas and thoughts. So thank you, and bye bye.
Hey, bye bye. Have a great day.
Bye.